No one knew he used to sit for hours in the dark, silently screaming with his eyes. By day, he laughed, spoke, worked, as if life hadn't crushed him from the inside out. But at night, the empty room echoed with the breathing of a man quietly falling apart. The pain he carried had no name, no shape, only weight. And it was heavy enough to drag his soul down, without anyone ever noticing. He once had a world, small but warm. In it, there was her, the one who would place her hand over his heart every time the storm rolled in. They dreamed of a home filled with light, late dinners, and a few tired laughs after long days. He had truly believed that life had finally given him a place to belong. Then she was gone. Suddenly. Like a storm that swept away everything they hadn't said. A phone call. An accident. Her name spoken through choked sobs. He ran to the hospital, his hands shaking so badly he couldn't even open the door. And then he just stood there watching everything fall apart in silence. No tears came. Only wide, dry eyes, locked on the white sheet draped over the woman he loved. Time moved on after that. People around him kept living. But he was just existing. He kept working. Kept smiling when he had to. Kept answering, "I'm fine," whenever someone asked. No one noticed the collapse behind his empty stare. No one heard the silent screaming that tore through his mind every night. He became a ghost in every conversation. A man lost inside his own life. Losing her didn't just mean losing someone he loved. He lost the best version of himself. The man he was when he was with her. And the most painful part? No one knew. Days passed, each heartbeat like a blade carving into memory. He began to fear the night. The dim flicker of the bedside lamp. The way a song, playing by chance, could carry the echo of a familiar melody. To forget, he worked more. He buried himself in meetings, emails, deadlines. So deep he barely had time to breathe. People praised him for being strong, capable, professional. He smiled and nodded. But inside, he was in ruins. Like a house left hollow after the fire had long passed. And when work was no longer enough to keep the emptiness out, he turned to alcohol. At first, just one drink to fall asleep. Then more to stop dreaming. Every night. He feared the dreams. Feared seeing her face, her smile, those eyes. Only to wake up to the cold nothingness beside him. There were times he just left. No warning, no luggage. He boarded a random bus, heading to a place where no one knew his name. He drifted through a quiet seaside town, spending hours watching the waves crash against the shore. One afternoon, he noticed a child drawing in the sand. A face so focused, with eyes that looked just like hers when she smiled. He froze, without knowing why. He sat down beside the child. He said nothing, just watched. The child was drawing someone crying. But then, with one swipe of a small hand, wiped away the tears, and said, "I don't like drawing sad people forever. If there's some sunshine, they can smile again." He didn't answer. But something inside him stirred. Barely there, fragile, faint, but real. That night, he didn't drink. For the first time in months, he let himself feel the emptiness. Didn't fight it. Didn't try to numb it. He just sat with it. With himself. With the grief that had never been named. And in that stillness, for the very first time, he asked himself, is there still a way back? After that night, he stopped running. Not because the pain had gone, but because he no longer had the strength to run. Some mornings, he sat on the steps of the small hotel, watching the sun rise slowly, feeling the breath still moving in his chest, even if his heart felt hollow. And in that emptiness, he began to hear the things he'd tried so hard to silence. Her laughter. The unfinished sentence from that final afternoon. The promise of an autumn they would never reach together. He started to write. Not for anyone else to read, but so he wouldn't drown in himself. The pages were stained with ink and tears, filled with anger, confusion, regret. But some pages were soft, too. Like the memory of her leaning on his shoulder, whispering, "No matter what happens, you have to live well." Writing that line broke him open. Not with the silent tears he used to know, but with shaking sobs, raw and loud. Like a child being held tightly after waking from a terrible dream. He returned to the hospital. Stood quietly in front of the place where everything had ended. No flowers. No prayers. Just a hand resting on a cold wall. As if to say a late goodbye. Then he returned to the city. The same streets. The same coffee shop. The same familiar faces. But this time, he didn't avoid them. When someone asked, "How have you been?" he didn't say, "I'm fine." He simply smiled and said, "I'm learning how to live again." And for the first time, he didn't feel alone. The pain was still there. But now, it had a place. Not as a wound, but as a part of him. A part that had finally woken him up. Returning to the city, he was no longer the man he once was. The man who avoided anything that reminded him. Who counted each night as a step further from her name. Now, he accepted that some days she would come back to him, suddenly. Like a cool breeze cutting through a summer afternoon. And instead of shutting himself down, he let the memory pass. As gently as it had come. He cleaned the apartment. The little home they once shared. Every corner still held echoes of them. But this time, he didn't erase it. He didn't replace anything. He cleaned. And kept the things she once loved. The cream-colored teacup. The half-finished wool scarf she had started to knit. Not as a desperate grip on the past, but as a quiet presence. A tender kind of remembrance. She was still here. In a way. Woven into the small details of the life he was now rebuilding. His friends were surprised. He texted first. He asked to meet. He smiled more. Not the tight, forced smile they'd grown used to, but a real one, alive, grounded. He began telling his story. No longer afraid of pity. No longer ashamed of the grief. Because he understood now. Only when you let others step into your darkness can the light find its way in. One day, during a volunteer group meeting, he spoke about her. Not with a trembling voice, but with warmth and respect. She taught me how to love life, he said. And death couldn't take that from me. No one said anything. No one rushed to comfort him. No one looked away. They simply sat in silence. Their eyes soft. As if, for the first time, they were truly seeing him. Without the mask he'd worn for so long. He hadn't become someone new. He had simply returned to himself. The version that had been lost in the pain. And was now found again. Through tears. Through silence. And through the quiet courage to keep going. Life didn't get easier. The pain never vanished. But he learned how to live with it. Like something natural held quietly in the heart. No longer an open wound, but a healed scar. One that aches gently when the wind shifts. He still woke up each morning, made a cup of coffee, and played the song she used to love. Not to hold on, but simply to say hello. Quietly, sincerely. The little things that once broke him had now become the things that kept him grounded. The birdsong outside his window. Children laughing in the park. A stranger offering a smile after accidental eye contact. The world hadn't changed. But he had. Deeper, calmer, and far kinder with himself. He started writing a blog, sharing pieces of his journey. Not for sympathy, but to say to anyone suffering in silence, "You are not alone." To his surprise, people came. They wrote to him, telling him about their grief, their breakups, their sleepless nights. He didn't try to fix them. He just listened. He stayed. Exactly the way he once wished someone had stayed for him. One day, someone asked, "Have you forgotten her?" He smiled. "No," he said. "And I don't need to." Because he understood now. To keep living isn't to erase the past. It's to let it walk beside you. Quietly, peacefully. Some loves don't need a happy ending. Their memory alone is enough to make you live more gently, more truthfully, every single day. Now, when he looks in the mirror, he sees a real person. Not perfect, not polished, but honest. And more importantly, someone strong enough to love again. If that day ever comes. No one ever knew how deeply he once wrestled with his pain. But now, he no longer needs to hide. Life never gave him the chance to say goodbye, but it taught him how to keep going. Even while carrying a piece that would always be missing. He no longer tried to outrun the pain. He let it walk beside him. Like an old friend. Quietly reminding him of what once mattered. Now, when he sees someone suffering in silence, he doesn't ask why. He doesn't say just move on. He simply sits with them. Listens. Because he knows. Sometimes, presence is the only thing a broken heart truly needs. And if you're reading this, carrying a pain you don't yet have words for, know this. You are not alone. You don't need to be strong right away. You don't need to have it all figured out. Just keep breathing. Keep moving. Even if your steps are slow and uncertain. Because one day, like him, you'll learn how to live again. Not because the pain is gone, but because you're no longer afraid to feel it.